I first noticed her in the hush before first bell, when the hallway lights were still yawning awake and the coffee in my hand cooled in the slow way of shy mornings. She moved like a soft breeze through the room numbers. A woman in her late 30s with a cardigan the color of oatmeal and a stack of graded essays pressed to her chest, as if they were the small hearts she guarded. The rest of us hurried and talked, comparing test data and email threads, but she kept a quiet rhythm that felt like a lullaby for a building made of cinder block and ringing bells. Her name is Ms. Avery, and she teaches literature, though what she really teaches is gentleness. You can see it in the way she straightens a crooked poster or nudges a pencil back to the edge of a desk until it sits square, ready to be picked up by a hand that often shakes. She waters the little plant on her window ledge while the sun scrapes itself across the glass, and she hums like she has made peace with the smallness of the moment. The students know she will remember who likes to sit near the heater and who prefers the window. They know she keeps tissues by the novel shelf and granola bars in the bottom drawer for the mornings when home forgot to feed them. If I am honest, I think her quiet is born from a doubt that never fully loosens. In the faculty room she laughs at the right times, but her eyes tilt toward the floor when the conversation turns to awards and data walls. Once, while we shelved paperbacks in the library, she confessed that some evenings she walks to her car feeling like a shadow. She worries her voice is too soft, her lessons too tender for a world that measures change in numbers. She carries the weight of memories that do not belong to her. Stories of students with rooms that echo and fridges that hum mostly with air. And she wonders if her kindness is anything more than a small petal dropped in a flooded street. Yet there is a steadiness in her. During bus duty, under the thin winter light, she is a lighthouse in a coat that never seems warm enough. She kneels to tie a shoe, reminds them to zip their backpacks, and waves each bus off like a mother sending ships to sea. She reviews drill procedures with a calm, practiced care, not because she expects storms, but because she believes in umbrellas. In the quiet moments I catch her writing short notes to students, simple lines about effort and courage, little seeds folded into paper that might bloom later when the ground finally warms. The day it happened began like any other, stitched together with the small routines that made her classroom feel like a refuge. Morning light spilled across the rows of desks, catching on the spines of paperbacks she had carefully arranged by genre. Students shuffled in with backpacks slung low, their laughter bouncing off the walls in a way that always seemed to ease her doubts for a moment. She smiled as she passed out handouts, her voice carrying softly through the hum of whispered conversations. But sometimes the ordinary cracks open without warning. The sudden sound that shattered the calm was sharp, unfamiliar, and terrifying. At first the students froze, eyes darting to one another, uncertain if this was a drill or a cruel mistake of timing. Then the second noise followed, louder, closer, and the fear in the air thickened until it felt hard to breathe. In that instant, Ms. Avery changed. Whatever quiet uncertainty she carried dissolved into something fierce and unshakable. She stood taller than I had ever seen her, her voice firm as she called the students to the far corner of the room. Her hands trembled only for a moment before she pulled the door closed and turned the lock, her body already positioning itself between danger and the young lives pressed together like frightened sparrows. The students clung to each other, their wide eyes reflecting panic, but what they saw in her was steadiness. She crouched low, urging them to stay quiet, whispering that she was there, that they were safe. The truth is, she did not know if they were safe at all, but her words became a shield as much as her body did. Her heart must have been pounding so hard it echoed in her ears, yet she steadied her breathing so they would not feel her fear. Time in those moments stretched and twisted. Seconds became long threads of silence, broken only by distant footsteps and the occasional muffled sound that rattled the walls. She kept her back to the door, her arms out as if she could hold the weight of the world against it. Every instinct told her to hide, but something deeper, something born of love told her that her place was not behind the students but in front of them. And in that stillness, something shifted inside her. The doubts that had haunted her, the belief that she was small and unnoticed, evaporated in the fire of necessity. She was no longer the quiet teacher with an uncertain laugh. She was their protector, the one who bore the fear so they would not have to. In her silence, in her courage, she became what she never believed she could be, a shield. When the danger finally passed, it did not leave in a rush, but in a slow unraveling. The distant noises faded, replaced by the heavy silence of a building holding its breath. Then came the hurried footsteps of safety officers moving through the halls, the sound of doors being unlocked one by one, and finally the soft knock at her classroom door that signaled it was over. Still, for a moment, she did not move. Her arms had stiffened from holding herself between her students and the world, but her mind lingered in that suspended space where fear and courage meet. Only when she heard a trembling voice whisper her name did she exhale, and with it came tears she had not allowed herself to shed until now. She turned and saw the faces of her students, tear-streaked but alive, their small hands still gripping each other, their trust in her unshaken. They rushed to her then, not with the chaos of children, but with the gravity of souls who understood what had just happened. Some buried their faces against her arms, others simply stood close enough to feel her presence. She held them all in the only way she could, her voice soft again, though it carried a new weight. She told them they were brave, that they mattered, that they were safe now. Later, when parents came running and the halls filled with the sound of sobs and reunions, she stood quietly in the background. She watched as each student disappeared into the arms of family, her own hands empty but her heart fuller than it had ever been. One boy, before leaving, turned and said words she would never forget. He told her he had not been afraid because she had been there. That night, as she sat alone in her small living room, the day replayed in fragments. The noise, the fear, the way her body had moved before her mind had even caught up. She thought of the retired teacher's words about how teaching is not measured in lessons but in imprints left on hearts. And she realized that in her act of shielding her students, she had not only protected them from harm, but had also shown them the kind of love that would linger long after the moment had passed. Her doubts, though not entirely gone, had been transformed. She understood now that her quietness was not weakness but strength, that her softness was not invisibility but presence. She had carried her students through the storm, and in doing so, she had found herself. In the weeks that followed, she returned to her routines: the plant on the windowsill, the granola bars in the drawer, the notes folded into papers. Yet something had shifted forever. The students looked at her differently now, not just as their teacher, but as their protector. And she, in turn, walked the halls with a new kind of steadiness. She no longer questioned if she made a difference. She knew she had. If this story touched you, I invite you to share your thoughts below. Your likes, comments, and subscriptions help us bring more true spirit stories to life. Stories that remind us of the power of love, resilience, and humanity.